Morning on your radio station from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on We Vibe 94.9 Brooklyn, CRFM 89.5 Grenada, Liberty FM 92.3 in St. Lucia, and Sister Isle FM 92.9 in Carriacou. Now, that's a Caribbean marketplace, hosted by the Spice Ram. Tune in for the music, the people, the vibe, and the fun. Market time, it's our time on this station every Saturday from 6 to 10 a.m. Building a stronger economy means all Grenadian workers benefit, those who work in the public service and those who work elsewhere. Now that the period of shared sacrifices are over, the benefits must be shared among every Grenadian. More money for house repair, more money to improve healthcare, more money for training, more money for education, and yes, more money for public servants. $55 million in various payments. We are the Grenadian family looking out for each other. And even as we fight for ourselves and our families, we always remember our neighbors. We forge ahead together. We got to come together, learn to love your brother.
You're listening to Hard Talk Grenada via www.hardtalkgrenada.com.
What you come here for? What you come here for? What you come here? What you come here?
And good morning to you, Grenada, Carriacou, and Pity Martinique, yeah? Once again, it is time for Hard Talk.
All we want is unity and peace.
Yes, indeed. That's all we want, eh? That's all we want. Yeah, everything else could be built off of that. Unity and peace, we could build anything off of that, yeah?
That's right.
Tune dates back to 2003, man. Yeah, good morning to you, Devon.
Good morning, Sheldon. Good morning, Grenada.
Yeah.
And wherever you are listening to us live.
Devon's song's tired. Devon's song's tired for a
very
specific
tired.
reason.
Very tired.
We know why Devon is feeling tired. Yeah.
GBSS.
And study your recreation in classroom or playing field. Let those of each generation respect to tradition yield. The feats of fathers and brothers are beacons marking the way. The torch handed on by others, we must keep alight today. The prize to the one who earns it, let this be your golden rule. And never enhances merit, the slacker is folly's tool. He also ran in the champion. Each one can but do his best. The winner's display depends on the efforts of all the rest. To be in the van is not all, for each has to play his role. The team wins the match at football. The one man must kick the goal. The prize to the one who earns it. Let this be your golden rule. And never enhances merit. The slacker is folly's tool. In third time or in vacation, a whole truly great West Indies, be this our constant aim, surmounting insular boundaries, a people in north and name. The prize to the one who earns it, let this be a golden rule, and never hands his merit, the slacker is fully school.
Yes.
All right, you're happy now.
That was a champion song.
No, I just want to make sure you're happy now.
I'm elated. I'm
And
I'm enjoying this.
No, Marilyn, Marlene, I'm not joining in and singing. I'm not.
That feel good.
I left it up to Nazim and Devon.
That feel good.
Two GBSS boys inside the studio here.
You have sent
the closest
Joseph Convent,
the closest I
Grenville?
have to it is probably this is actually what's going on up there right now, right? So no, that's not the school song. I wonder. Let me see if I could find the school song somewhere there. Yeah, the thing is, most of the schools, and I continue to complain about that, most of the schools have not gone and recorded their school song. Yeah, most of the schools have not done that. And as such, it is extremely difficult to find it. Let me see if this one is just horn blowing or if they're actually singing the school song here. More horn blowing again.
More horn. Celebration in Grenville.
Let me see this one. Yeah, that's more horn again. All I think is just I said, okay. Yeah, I'm looking for the actual school song, like somebody singing it, and I cannot find it for this St. Joseph's Convent, Grenville. So Keisha, you gotta call and sing it.
Yeah. Fine, so
Keisha Grant.
Honorable Keith
Skeeter Lewis. Honorable Yolan Bain Horsford. My good friend up there, Cheyenne Date. One of you all better call and sing the school song, because I do have it. I don't want to be biased. So somebody had a call 440-7377. 440-7377. Somebody had a call and sing it. I hope there is somebody calling to sing it. Good morning. Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Good morning.
But as a man, I didn't think you could know the school song for it.
Why not?
Yes,
Yes, Convent.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Yes, you're live, sir. Go right ahead.
Hello.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Just remember, when you're calling, listen to the phone line. If you're trying to listen to me on the radio and you're trying to listen to Devon on the radio and speak to us, we won't be able to hold that conversation. By the time we say hello once, hello twice, hello three times,
problem.
We're going to have to leave. Yeah. So, yeah, one of you young ladies, or not so young ladies, one of you had a call and sing it. What?
I know Honorable Yolan Bain Horsford remember that song.
Hey, that's the first time I see nuns behave that bad, you know?
Man.
Them nun had no behavior, you know, sister.
In the entire history
Sister?
of St. Joseph Convent, Grenville.
No.
They have now tasted the victory.
Sister jump up like she's soca monarch, ragging hand.
Of course, the Lord will forgive her.
Well, after 53 years of trying, and so many years are coming in second. And we did say that there's a high possibility. We did say it this week, yeah? Yeah, let's see if it's somebody that knows the school song that called. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you, Senator?
Quite fine, sir. You go right ahead. You're live.
All right, I'm calling from Canada. That's the buddy from Canada.
Yes, sir. Good man.
Hey, that is, how are you caught them man so bad, man?
Hey?
Why you give them guys such a bad cutters?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, let's say that they just got a shellacking. So we'll put it like this.
Last week, is everything?
Everything is good, man. Everything is good. Celebration in
How
Grenville.
is everything, buddy?
Everything is going good, okay so far. We had some celebrations in Grenville last week. We have celebrations in Grenville this week.
I'm calling to say congratulations to Dr. Mitchell and his the team,
Yeah.
especially Brother Tobias. I'm calling to wish him happy, everything okay, and I am so happy. I'm the happiest man in Canada right now.
Okay. All right,
Yeah,
man.
so-
But blessings. We're glad to hear from you. And we should have
Yeah,
Senator
man, don't
Humphrey
worry.
in with
You
us shortly.
maybe, let's say you're going to see me down in before the year finish.
Okay, great.
Yeah, man.
All right, my
I'm
brother.
the happiest man around, buddy. Yeah. So everything all right otherwise?
Yes, everything else is okay.
Okay then, brother. So you take it easy and all you keep up the good work.
No problem. All right, thank you.
All right, my friend.
All right, later.
Yes, and folks, we should be joined shortly by Senator Chester Humphrey. Should be in studio with us. We're just going to be having a chat. And so let your friends and your family know, it's always an interesting interview when he's in studio with us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's always an interesting. So first of all, let's just say congratulations to all of the teams.
All athletes.
Every single one of you. All of the athletes, all of the teams. What I saw there yesterday when I went to the National Stadium proves exactly what we've been saying earlier this week. The only thing keeping any one of the teams from winning is the winning mindset. St. Andrew's Convent, St. Andrew's, no, it's St. Joseph's Convent, Grenville. Let's say the thing properly. St. Joseph's Convent, Grenville. Get accustomed to saying it, eh? Yes, St. Joseph's Convent, Grenville. They came down with the winning mindset. And they went up with the trophy. The trophy went over the Granite Tank last night.
Yeah, the female trophy.
They went up with the female trophy. The combined trophy by the St. Andrew Anglican Secondary School. And the boys by the Grenada Boys Secondary School.
As usual.
Yeah, and from the time you reach in Belmont, you're hearing them drum. From the time you ain't even reaching Lagoon Road. From Belmont, you're hearing them drum and them horn and thing. Yeah.
And you hearing Convent getting on to, I did quite home. And you could hear the horns and so since after 7 this morning.
They've been making some of them like they sleep in the school.
It's a well deserved celebration.
Yes, indeed. And I think not a single school has any right to leave 2018 Intercol feeling sad
or bad
or feeling diminished. Not the Anglican High School. Yeah? It was a mammoth task to beat you all. It was no easy thing to beat you all. They had to put down some spectacular performances in order to beat you all. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be embarrassed of. The J.W. Fletcher Catholic Secondary School, they did an absolutely excellent job as well for a small school. Yeah, I think right now them becoming a caliber in one of them bullets in Tantine as well. Yeah, their caliber move up from 22. Right now they're going up somewhere around 9mm. They might end up at 45. But they're going up the road. So the J.W. Fletcher Catholic Secondary School, they did well as well. Yeah, you also have the Grenada Christian Academy coming out of Pearls. We spoke about that school here. And you saw some marvelous performances over the 3 days by that school as well. And every school had their spectacular performances. I don't think there was a single school that went back without trophies. Boca did well. Yeah.
Grenville Secondary had St. David's Catholic.
The Seventh-day Adventist school.
Comprehensive in St. Patrick's.
They did exceptionally well as well.
And we see the Iguanas getting back again. That's St. David's.
They're starting to build a team.
Westerhall Secondary.
They're starting to get back there. So they're beginning to look possible again. Yeah, the Iguanas, this is the Westerhall Secondary School. And Carriacou and Petit Martinique continuing to punch up there in the top 5 in both categories. They're continuing to be punching there.
Years,
Don't be surprised that Carriacou and Petit Martinique goes up one of these days with the combined. Yeah, with the combined trophy.
With the combined trophy.
Yeah, although I think you all need to change the name, But the combined trophy.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
that's
I think is something that needs to be.
It's feeling unfair to others. It have a feeling of unfairness, That's in my view. And so what
Yeah. Oh, Terry, we know you're hearing all the horns up there from GBSS. I know you can hear it because I hearing it from quite in Belmont. I was hearing it. For the time I braced by the traffic light, they are hearing it. So I think the schools out of Carriacou, but again, two schools that nobody was looking for that sort of performance from, former Intercol champions, the Presentation Brothers College and the St. Joseph's Convent St. George. Yeah, they did excellent as well. St. Joseph's Convent St. George actually had some scores in 100 and something. I mean, the past few years was what, 40 something?
Yeah, 20 something.
50 something, 70 something.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it was. Right now, they have started to put some serious scores on the board. Again,
they're on a mission.
Careful that next year Intercol is between the two convents, you know. Because right now, St. Joseph's Convent, St. George jumping up to all convent girl is one. So,
of course.
That's what they're jumping up and saying.
Sister.
Yeah, all convent girl is one.
Oh.
But next year, when Intercol comes around again, in case you all have not realized, it's no longer any team just walk in and walk out with the Intercol trophy. You have to fight for it over the 3 days. And the 3 days is a thing that we have to discuss too. But you have to fight for it over the 3 days. You have to fight for that trophy. It's not just going to fall in your lap.
Nope.
Because you have, while you have St. Joseph's Convent, St. Andrew there, you also have St. Joseph's Convent, St. George coming up. And the boys, you have Presentation Brothers College coming up. Wester Hall is regaining some strength there. MacDonald College in both the boys and the girls. You have to always look out for MacDonald College as well. So believe me, Intercol is no longer a done deal that you're going to Intercol knowing who's going to win. Intercol is an open race.
And it'll be very interesting over the next couple of years to see the performances by the female athletes. I'm of the view that within the next 2 or 3 years, Convent Grenville, right, will dominate. That's just my view. They have been consistent, and if you look at the category in which they dominated, and so prep, sub-juniors, and the juniors coming up, so they have potential for the next couple of years under good guidance and so on. I think
for a few years.
Yeah, they have
it's going.
good future.
I'm going to say, Intercol next year is going to be extremely competitive.
Ooh,
Anglican High School will not sit on their laurels and say
they're coming back.
They're coming back. As far as Anglican High School consider, they say that is their trophy, the lend all year. So they're coming for it. So believe me, it's going to be very competitive next year. St. Joseph's Convent Grenville, having held the trophy, are not willing to give it up. So it's going to be extremely competitive in 2019.
MacDonald College.
2019, God's willing.
The female athletes from MacDonald College.
CC and the others,
they are coming together, and
you have Keena and so coming out of Carriacou. So there's so much talent, such a pool of talent. I wish we had Intercol twice a year.
Yeah,
anyways,
for real.
Just some suggestions though to the Principals Association. Just my humble viewing everything and looking at the series of injuries that several of the athletes went through over the few days. Just my suggestion. Bring it back to 2 days. And in fact, you can have it at 3 days. Let me put it like this. Have it at 3 days. But the week before, do the heats the week before. It's very difficult for an athlete who's running the 200 meter plus the 400 meter and maybe even the 100 meter relay or so to have to put out peak performance over a period of 72 hours. It just wouldn't happen. What happens is what you saw there.
Injuries.
Injuries are going to happen because they have absolutely no recuperation time. Yeah? So if we allow the week before, we allow for the preliminary.
The heats and so on.
The heats. Yeah, the heats and so on, the preliminary heats. And then the following week, we have day 1 and day 2, the finals, being run off. But as long as you continue doing that over 3 days, we might be ending the careers early of some athletes that have the possibility to medal for Grenada in the Olympic Games or the Commonwealth Games or the Pan American Games or so. We may be ending early the careers of some of these young people. So I think it's very important, extremely important, that we ensure that there is a spacing between the preliminaries. I would say do it the week before. That's just my humble opinion. I'm not an expert in relation to this. I know about lactic acid buildup and that kind of thing, right? I understand all of that. But I'm saying, let the athletes do their preliminaries 1 week before, the preliminary heats, then they come and they do that. I heard a caller this morning on Shaggy speaking about intercall being the basis for Carifta games. I'm sorry, but intercall cannot be the basis for Carifta games. By the time intercall is held, unless we're willing to change the time of intercall into January.
I was about to make a point on that too.
Yeah, because Carifta games, you have to submit your teams by the ending of January, which means that we would have to move intercall games to the beginning of January or in December in order for it to be used as the measuring stick to send some of the athletes over to Carifta. And very surprisingly though, there are athletes that I have seen in intercall games. We're watching them. They're winning by several meters, nobody close to them. Yeah? They're winning those races, but they have not made the Carifta qualifying time. So sometimes we go to the intercall games and we see people running, we see people jumping, we see some spectacular performances, but they are just the best of their category. They have not got the qualifying time or distance for the Carifta. Their qualifying times and distance, you must run the 400 meter within a specific time to qualify to represent at the Carifta games. You must run the 100 meter, the 200 meter, the 1500 meter. You must be able to clear a certain distance in the high jump, in the long jump, in the javelin, in the discus. There are qualifying distances and times that you must make, and you must make them prior to the end of January to be able to qualify for the Carifta games. So intercall cannot be used as the measuring stick to send anybody to Carifta. I just thought that as a person who knows that I should clear that up for many of you, because this is not the first time I'm hearing it.
One of the suggestions I would like to see happen, one of the things I like to see happen, after every intercall, based on what you just said, in terms of the time for the selection of the team, you have some excellent performances by a lot of our athletes. Let us use this, and I don't know if that's the benchmark. Let us use this intercall, right? And so, games selecting potential athletes, they perform real good, and they have that edge to move on. You keep them in training to prepare them for 2019 Carifta games. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right?
I agree.
And so you give them much more time for preparedness, and so you up on the time, everything, because when you look at the performances that you see in intercall, you wondering, well, how come this person is not there or that person is not there? As you say, the time again is one of the benchmark. So we have to develop something to,
I would also suggest, excuse me, I'd also suggest that a review of the points table take place. That's me speaking as Sheldon. I would suggest that a review. First position, 12. Second position, 8. Third position is 5 points. Fourth position is what? 4 points. It's something like that. I don't have the booklet with me, but it's something like that. And what it means is that if a school has enough athletes and they enter enough athletes in a race, let's say the 1500 meter, which is a race that you could get a lot of points from, if you enter enough athletes and if they place within the top 5.
Well, how many athletes per race, though?
But that's the thing. I think with the 1500 meter, I think you can have 2 or 3. I think it's 2 maximum. But here's what. If, for instance, School A wins, so they get 12 points, but School B has an athlete that finishes second and one that finishes fifth, and they get the same amount of points.
Yeah, and I understand.
According to how I was looking at the table last night, that's how it's coming across.
But one of the things, and there is an argument about that, but I see it as, look, if every school is able to fill 2 or 3 athletes per event, I don't really see the
all schools can't.
Why?
The Grenada Boys Secondary School is close to 1,000 students.
Mm-hmm.
The St. Andrew Anglican Secondary School is what? a little over 500, going to 700 somewhere there.
They have about
Right.
400 and something boys.
You expect Pearls to be able to field as much athletes as they can in a 1500 meter?
No, but you only need 2.
No, you're saying that.
No,
You're saying
no,
that.
in
But
the
when you
all
look at the
events.
school, no, you're saying that. But it's not just you only need 2. You need 2 who can place in the top 5 to give your school enough points.
Exactly.
And if you do not have that, it places you at a disadvantage. So schools that have a larger population, a larger gene pool to work with, will always be the ones who are gaining the slight advantage over other schools.
I see.
I believe in giving points 1 to 4, possibly 5, and after that, no points.
You see,
Because I believe it only benefits schools with larger populations. That's my personal view.
I don't totally see that way, because I think that if every school, right, if every school in a 1500 or 400 meter in the preliminaries, or right, could afford, most of them do, because they have sports. They have athletes running almost all the events that they do in intercall.
It's unfair for schools with larger populations.
Well, no, I don't see that way. Yes, you may have a larger pool to choose from, right? But
Exactly.
that don't mean, right, that the larger pool means that you have the best.
It usually does.
SAS proved that.
You have more of a possibility of having, let's say, you have more of a possibility of having 5 young men that could run under 11 seconds.
in
right?
one school.
In 100 meter.
Yeah,
you have a higher possibility of having that if you have more students to choose from.
But what I'm saying, but how much of them that would be, that you would have to use for a particular event, as we are trying to think out, either 2 or 3. You enter and you can enter the 5.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so I'm just saying that, look, if every school is afforded the opportunity to have 3 athletes per event, and I know all of the schools can do that because they have their sports.
All of the schools can't.
Okay, Sheldon.
Some of the schools have, what I'm simply
yeah,
saying is
no,
that I
but-
believe
but-
that some of the schools, I know, because the Principals Association basically is looking at it the exact way you're looking at it. I'm looking at it differently. Yeah, I'm looking at it differently. And I don't think that it is fair to some of the smaller schools like the J.W. Fletcher. Because, listen, I'll put it to you like this, If the point system wasn't the way that it was, you would have seen some smaller schools rating a little higher.
Watch, you have an argument there, but I'm just saying that, look, every school has their event. Every school runs all the events in their sports meet. So they have an opportunity to choose the best 5 or 4 or whatever to go in there, right, and partake in intercall, right? So it's not, in my view, it's not a disadvantage. Okay, GBSS may have 900 students.
Here's a point that Joe's is making, and it's a good point too. They have a qualifying time for entering heats, and that is, before I continue on the argument, it's something that we definitely would have to look at. Is there qualifying time for intercall games for athletes entering into different events? Or is there a qualifying distance? If there is, it could level out the playing field a little more. Then school A can just send 2 or 3 students into something. If there is a qualifying time or a qualifying distance, I'm not sure if there is, but if there is, that would level out the playing.
Based on my information, there would have been. I don't know for now, because I could speak years ago, right? There would have been a benchmark or qualifying time, but it's an argument, and you know what? I had that same chat with a couple of persons and so from St. Andrews, and they talk about the disadvantage and so for SAS and everything like, and I understand that, but when you look at it, under the same point standing, 2 years or 3 years ago.
Sorry, Josie.
2 years or 3 years ago, SAS dominated. Not just winning by 4 or 5 points. They dominating under the same point system. Right? But again...
Okay. Where's our discussion that will take a longer period of time?
Yeah,
Here's what, we're going to take a short break. I'm going to try to contact Senator Humphrey now. I know he is due to be in studio with us this morning. I haven't seen him as yet. And that's very unlike Senator Humphrey. Usually here exactly on time, a little before time, a little wrong time, and that kind of thing. So let me just make a quick phone call, find out where he is exactly, and we'll be back with more hard talk.
What you come here for? What you come here for? What you come here? What you come here? What you come here for? All we want is unity and peace. Hey, in the party, oi, we don't have to live like peace. No, no, no. All we want is unity and peace. Hey, in the party, oi, we don't have to live like peace. No, no, no. Oh, you mean? That's right. This is our party in here. We having our time, don't stop. We everybody breaking away. Strictly unity inside here. Tell them we don't want no trouble. This party is decent people. If you ever thinking evil, inside there is really not for you. All we want is unity and peace. Hey, in the party, oi, we don't have to live like peace. No, no, no. All we want is unity and peace. Hey, in the party, oi, we don't have to live like peace. No, no, no. All you mean? That's right. You dress and you ready to party. Look, you have a knife from your belly. Rude boy, that is plain enough to see. You come here to kill somebody. It's time that you stop that nonsense. We come here to enjoy ourselves. Leave hatred right there on top the shelf. This party is no violence. All we want is unity and peace. Hey, in the party, oi, we don't have to live like peace.
Yes, folks, and as promised, as I pick up my phone, I see the gentleman walk inside the studio. We have with us this morning, yes, which I just always say it, I'll just leave me alone, Senator Chester Humphrey. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Sheldon and Devon.
Good,
All right.
Good morning.
I realize your voice held up, man.
Yeah, well, my doctor, in the middle of the campaign, when my voice was going, my doctor, Michael Radix, told me exactly what to do. He gave me some medication because I had contracted the flu at the same time, which is something I don't normally get. And he showed me some techniques of voice control so as not to strain your voice further, and that carried me through, and my voice recovered very beautifully. I still have a little touch, but that's all right.
Me and you had to talk about that one because mine kind of gave me problems already. Kind of strained it. Yeah. Interesting election campaign. 1 week and some days since the election victory of the new National Party, resounding victory. Once again, 15 seats going the direction of the new National Party. What says Chester Arlington Humphrey?
Well, you miss out one is Arthur too.
Oh, yes, let me make sure.
Chester Arlington, Arthur Humphrey. Well, what can I say, Sheldon? It was a well-fought campaign. If I will do some comparatives, and based on my years of experience, because I entered politics at a very tender age. When I just turned into my teens, actually, that's many, many, many years ago. And I was an activist member of the New Jewel Movement. I attended the founding conference of the New Jewel Movement. I knew all of the actors, Teddy Victor, Sambas, you name them, and had gone through with them. I was the youngest member of the political bureau of the New Jewel Movement. I served there together with Lloyd Noel. I was secretary for Caribbean and Pan-African Affairs. And I was still in my teens. I was a leader of the student movement, etc. I founded one of the early trade unions, GAFU, in which Hudson Austin was the president general. I was the organizing secretary. Selwyn was the general secretary, and we scored some early successes attacking the Gary's agricultural base. So I go back many years and have a tremendous amount of practical experience in the movement. But what I can say from the comparators that I can look at is that the New National Party campaign was highly organized. Nothing was left for chance. The strategy of the party running on its record was a correct strategy, because that is what happened. The party ran on its record in the last 5 years and compared that record to the record of the National Democratic Congress in the previous 5 years, well, 4.5, 4.75 years. And that strategy spoke for itself. The workers had the practical experience of living under the two regimes. They lived under the stewardship of Mr. Burke as Minister of Finance. They saw the consequential effects of that stewardship. They were able to examine the role of the trade union movement and what we were trying to do. Because TAU has always been an open organization, very democratic and open, they were able to examine our programs and policies. And because we are an independent trade union organization, the workers place great confidence in us. And they were able to examine that. I want people to recall that we saw the world economic crisis coming, and our union prepared for it. In fact, it was at the General Council meeting of 2007. Since 2007, at that General Council meeting held at the Red Cross Center, my General Council adopted a resolution which is binding on the executive of the union, because the General Council is the second highest decision-making body, binding on the executive of the union, the management committee, that there was a common storm and that the securement of jobs and job security was of paramount importance, and that the union should do everything possible to preserve jobs. And interestingly, we were the only trade union to have done so, because we were the only trade union that did the analytical work. And that resolution saw us through. And so we were able to warn the government. In fact, with the coming to office of the National Democratic Congress, we made an early intervention to the Minister of Finance and to the Prime Minister that there was a coming storm in which the preservation of jobs would be key, and that what the union wanted was a national dialogue of all the social partners to see how we can confront that coming storm, because not only would the workers be affected, but this crisis would see the collapse of many businesses. And we felt that rather than the unions engage in an all-out fight with the employer class, since the employer class themselves would be victims of this coming crisis, that it would be best for us to pool our resources together and to have a strategy of collaboration in order to weather the storm. And that in that collaboration, our union was willing to negotiate down benefits. We were prepared to even give back on wages in exchange for the preservation of jobs. The old adage of our foreparents that half a loaf is better than none is a truism that no one can argue against. And so we adopted that approach. The Nazim Burke-led Minister of Finance, and Naz controlled the economy and dominated the cabinet. Because you had a prime minister who had very little technical knowledge of economics. And it's not unusual to have a prime minister who's not an economist. All right, so there was no significant disadvantage to Prime Minister Tillman Thomas, provided that we had a team that was genuine and that was concerned about the overall interests of the party in power, not the advancement of self. So I wouldn't fault Prime Minister Thomas for this. And we preached and called for us to start a social dialogue protocol, which would preserve jobs, would put some procedures in place for how we would handle things like retrenchment and so on. And we got absolutely no traction from Burke as the Minister of Finance. I want to remind the nation, because the employers would remember that the Technical and Allied Workers Union then took the lead. And we initiated the first social dialogue meeting which was held at the Koyaba Conference Room, where we invited all of the employers that we had relations with. And you know, TAO being the largest union, we had 72 different or 73 different collective agreements with 72 or 73 different employers. That would include almost all the banks. It would include many of the hotels, a lot of the factories. In the state sector, we were representing people in vector control, rodent control in the Princess Alice Hospital. We were in all of the utilities. We had a single union in electricity, in telephone. We had shared representation in Nawasa, but we were the larger of the two unions there. We controlled the representation of the international airport, both security as well as the avionics section, and then of course the LIAT and so on. So as a very broad-based trade union organization, we invited a lot of these employers for us to sit down, look at this coming crisis, and to see how together we could weather it. It took quite a few months before we were able to get Mr. Burke and so to move towards trying to negotiate a social protocol. So I'm saying all of this to say that with that experience, we felt that the most important approach in the upcoming election was to run on your record. Because the New National Party record in the last 5 years is quite frankly fantastic. The ability of the government to forge a wide alliance of all different class forces proved the astuteness of the political leader. And I'm saying it was not an opportunistic evolution of a strategy. As I told you, I remained at home. I did not vote in the election of 2013. I refused to cast my vote, and I remained at home. And while at home listening to the victory rally, which was held in Tantin, is something I've repeated oftentimes, Dr. Mitchell made this call, right? And I decided to answer the call, and we started to engage. As you know, the prelude to that was the meeting in August of 2012, when we laid 27 demands on the table in this meeting. And to our surprise, when the NNP manifesto was published for the 2013 election, all of the 27 demands, which we made just as a trade union, I mean, we're saying, look, we're demanding this of your government, and we will demand this of any government that emerges in the after the election. To our great surprise, those 27 demands found its way, word for word, inside of the NNP manifesto. And that signaled something to us. It signaled a change. That here was a government that we'd always opposed, but was prepared to listen, was prepared to listen to the leaders of labor. We were not making personal demands. There was not a demand for me to become chief of staff or me to become a special economic advisor to anybody. This was just a demand as part of the programmatic platform that the union had evolved for defending its members and defending the working class. And this was adopted wholesale, right? And for the first time in the history of Grenada, a social protocol was put in place. In fact, the World Bank and other international organizations, although Barbados was the first country in the Eastern Caribbean to put together such a protocol, the protocol which was put together then was a bit wider in that it involved more than the traditional social partners. It brought on board the NGO community and other interested groups. The religious community was on board. Mm-hmm. And what influenced the religious community is coming on board is the great work done by Father Sean and the Catholic Church. Because not only did they sit aside and just look for their engagement in the traditional religious fair, they broadened that scope and said, look, we recognize that in order for Christians to be true Christians, and while there's all the spirituality, there is a fundamental component of living, and that is material. Mm-hmm. And the church did something historic that I can't recall that was ever done. the church decided it would not sit on the sideline, that it was a major crisis ahead facing the entire country, and that the economy was in a deep crisis, that there was massive debt that was stifling the country, and what the Catholic Church did. And I have to praise Father Sean for this, because my understanding, he was the individual who initiated all of this. They got an expert out of Europe who had worked on the question of renegotiating of national debt. And at their expense, they brought the gentleman into Grenada to discuss the issue of national debt and so on. So that the church saw itself as an integral part, not just only in the spiritual realm, but also in the material realm of the country. And that provided a basis for broadening this whole engagement. So you had the faith-based organizations involved. So while the Catholic Church led the way, you had other organizations, other religious denominations coming on board. And then the social protocol started to take shape. Interestingly enough, I was not part of that initiative because in the earlier initiative under the NDC, I resigned when it became clear that I became a fetter in those discussions. We were meeting almost every other night. We were meeting at the True Blue Bay Hotel, several of us trying to negotiate this. And then it became a fight between me, Nazim Burke, and Chris Riggs, right? Because they were articulating one set of policies that were inimical to the interests of the workers. And they were citing only the interests of the business class. And we had several fights going back until at one stage the fight got personal. And I was attacked from a personal point of view by an individual who I would not name, because that is now water under the bridge and there's no need to bring it back. And I resigned. I tendered my resignation to the TUC, who refused to accept my resignation because they felt that, first of all, I was the principal author of this, and then secondly, based on my knowledge base and skill set, I was the best person. And I told them no. I thought that my time had come to an end and that my presence was being counterproductive, all right? And so I resigned. Thereafter, the entire thing was allowed to collapse so that the National Democratic Congress missed a golden opportunity. And I must say the negotiations on the government side was actually led by Minister of Finance Nazim Burke and his then political deputy Chris Riggs. So that flopped. However, on coming to office of the new National Party, rapid progress was made. And for the first time, and let me just say this for those listeners who have an anti-me sentiment, I was not part of that engagement. Of course, I would have influence in the background, right? But Madonna Harford played a significant role in it, as she played a significant role in the earlier period. In the earlier one with the NDC, she was actually the leader of the TUC's delegation. It was a two-person delegation, Madonna and myself, and she was the leader. But I carried the lead in many of the points and arguments put forward and so on. And I was replaced by General Secretary Bert Patterson. And as I said, the thing flopped. It never got anywhere. And the rest is history. But under the new National Party, Prime Minister Mitchell saw the importance of this thing, zeroed in on it. And not only did he zero in on it, he was a chair, I believe, and subject to correction. He played a major role in guiding this thing forward. And for the first time in the history of Grenada, a social protocol came into being, and then the rest is history. When he looked at the structural adjustment program, dealing with the fiscal imbalances in the state sector and the crisis that faced and so on, he held open discussions with the same group, brought them on board, an open discussion. I came into that meeting very late when they were talking about lowering the threshold of taxes as a way out of this crisis and so on. And the rest is history. I'm saying all of this to say is that for the 5 years, the new National Party had an enviable record, a record that it has never, in fact, in all of the years of the New National Party in politics, it has never achieved on the economic front what it achieved in the last 5 years of this term. In fact, Dr. Mitchell said it himself.
Yeah, it's true.
He said that this was the best term he has ever had. And again, as I said, he had the foresight. And I think it's not just foresight. You see, when somebody has what I call heart, when your motivations are sincere, people can see that sincerity. And that's why I step forward. As you know, historically, I've always had my battles with Dr. Mitchell. It has never been personal battles. It has always been battles on policy or the failure of policy or the failure to administer the state correctly and so on. And when he set out that challenge, he says, look, second time, 15, I don't know what I do to deserve that. Right? Hey, Chess, come and help me. I can't do this alone. Come and help me. You, Madonna, and others. I need help. And he spoke to his base. He said, look, I've been out of office for 5 years. You find your time now has come, so it's NNP time. He said, no. This ain't NNP time. This is Grenada time. We've got to put things straight, you know. And I came on board, and I had absolutely no regrets. So that when the strategy was being evolved, I felt that the man's most significant achievement has been in this last 5 years in terms of administering the state. Not said me alone. All the international organizations have said so. And as you know, I'm well connected regionally in the political field. I have over 9 prime ministers sitting and past and presidents on my phone that I can call.
Gosh done there, right?
And yeah, absolutely. and fellas have called me and said, but how you all are doing this thing? I've traveled to some of their countries. We sat down and talked. I gave them an insight into how the trade union movement was operating, our goals and objectives, how we were collaborating and cooperating with the government, how we were able to protect the workers, etc., etc. And people found this very exciting. Very exciting. Remember, as General Secretary of the Caribbean Congress of Labour, I was attending all the Labour ministers' meetings, presenting all of the different papers and so on to them. And that is where myself and Elvin Nimrod became very close. I had not known him before. But he, as Labour Minister, and I, together, Labour Commissioner, were traveling to these meetings and so on. And quite often he would say, Chess, well, send me a brief on it matters you think that I should raise. And we began, I mean, this is the Labour Minister. I mean, he belonged to a government that I had fought, and, you know, and we became very close, working together, working the regional circuit and so on. Whether it's in the Bahamas, whether it was in Jamaica, wherever we met, you know, on labor matters, whether it's in Trinidad, at ILO meetings, and there were many, many of those, you know. So the strategy of running on your record, whereas the strategy of the National Democratic Congress was to run away from the record because, as far as the workers are concerned, the record was a dismal one. It was essentially anti-worker. And all we had to do was speak the truth. And because they had no record to defend, or no record to run on, they then went personal. So there were attacks on me, my comrade Ray Roberts, for writing all these articles on me. In fact, I had to tell a mutual friend, and people wouldn't believe it, but George Holm and I are friends. I mean, we're not bosom friends, but we're more than acquaintances, and we quite often talk. I had to tell him, I said, George, well, tell my erstwhile comrade that I am not on the ticket. I'm not a candidate. I'm not seeking votes. So don't train your firepower on me. And as an old militiaman, and you would know that, Devon, you're taught to concentrate your fire from where it's coming from.
Exactly.
You know, so, yeah, I've been a bit long-winded, but it was a good campaign. I believe the superiority of the strategy of the New National Party became evident, and the warpness of the National Democratic Congress also became evident, and the Grenadian people had a clear choice to make, which was really not a very difficult choice to make at all.
Let me ask a question here. I've heard it on the NDC platform. Even after the election, they continue to mention that the adjustment in the salaries of the security workers and so on. What was the story? What took place with that one? I know it happened under Glenys Roberts as Minister of
Well,
Labor.
we
They keep
launched...
mentioning that as something positive that the NDC would have done.
No. That's Glenys Roberts that did that.
But they keep putting it
No,
in the
no,
context
no,
of
no.
an NDC did
Let
this.
me make the fight for. Let me make the points clear. First of all, the matter was raised by the Technical and Allied Workers Union. We raised it inside of the TUC because we were then representative for the first time of security guards. These workers, their numbers were increasing. The conditions of work were atrocious. They were working long hours. Many a time you would see them walking at different hours in the morning and at night on Sundays at public holidays. You know, they were the only group of guards who would work on a public holiday and not get double time. They were woefully exploited. In addition to which, larger numbers of women were joining that workforce, which meant that our families were coming under increased stress simply because women hold the families together. Women are the ones who would be at home at night while maybe a man might be at work or a man might be liming. So it meant that their economic circumstance was interfering with family structures and undermining the family structures and therefore contributing to deviant behavior that we would see in the society among young people.
Exactly.
So we became concerned. We wrote the TUC about it. And then we started a campaign for security guards. The campaign then saw us approach the Minister for Labor. And the minister at that time was Glenys Roberts. And we had absolutely no difficulty in convincing Glenys that this campaign was correct because she has the right tenor of empathy. And she bought the campaign and carried the campaign through. Then we broadened it and we went for increasing the minimum wage because the minimum wage had gone on for maybe close to 17 or 18 years without adjustment. But we wanted specific treatments for security guards and domestic helpers. When the minimum wage thing was eventually settled, the security guards were not addressed as properly as we wanted. They were making then $3.50 an hour or something like that. And we continued that struggle. And Glenys led that struggle inside of the cabinet. Mr. Burke took the side of the security firms and was pushing back on Glenys. We were demanding a minimum wage, I think, of $12 an hour or something like that, so that you would get, I think it was $96 when you did an 8-hour day, $144 when you did a 12-hour day, because most security guards work for 12 hours, right, which give them little time to sleep and little time with their families, right, and so on. So that there was a big fight in the cabinet over this, and I can tell you who stood on the side of Glenys. Glenys got Peter David on her side as a firm ally. He got Ali Gill and Joe Gilbert and others, while Burke, Prime Minister Mitchell, Tillman Thomas was sort of basically indifferent. On economic matters, he took his cue from Burke, essentially. So there was a strong pushback from Burke. I mean, we could speak now. At the time, I couldn't reveal this because, you know, there are certain principles involved in cabinet and so on. But eventually we settled, we made a compromise and settled on $6, and then so it moved from $3.50 to $6, and then from $6 to $8, where it is at the moment. So while in effect the amendment to the minimum wage was actually done while the NDC was in office, and that's true, it's factual, that's a case. But the role of Glenys Roberts and the role of Nazim Burke must be exposed for the country to know the truth. And Sheldon and Devon, in my campaign, do you know, they have never attacked me on the veracity of anything I've said. My involvement in the campaign was never to denigrate anybody. My involvement in this campaign, and I said so. People came to me when I raised the issue of the incompetence of the NDC and the amount of houses, units that the Chinese gave to the NDC, and specifically Mr. Burke had the responsibility of finding the finances, like the international airport. in the international airport is Bernard Cord, who found the finances. I mean, Morris was the diplomatic face and people like him and so on, and but Bernard is the person. That's the role of a Minister of Finance, to fund the policies and programs of your government. And Mr. Burke cannot deny that I came to him. Neither Mr. Chris DeRiggs could deny that I came to them in 2008. And I can tell you, we met in Dr. Radix's restaurant. He had a hamburger place where the two roads, where the backstretch of Montrouge and the road going down to the airport, corners there.
Yeah.
That he had a restaurant there. I can't remember. I think it's Uncle Joe's restaurant, he called. Me and Chris DeRiggs spent a whole morning and a part afternoon there discussing and arguing and so on. And he came to me to try and see, because I told him, I said, look, Chris, I've reached a stage really right now where I'm going to go on attack against your Minister of Finance. I'm going to blast him in the face of the workers, because, I'm not making, we are all comrades, you know what I mean? We come from the same ideological background. We have the same philosophy of promoting the interests of working people and so on. But to be quite frank, he has now adopted an anti-people, anti-worker stance. And I'm making this point here, that not on one occasion have they ever contested anything I've revealed. Now, some people have called me when I was making the point on the housing question and the combination of incompetence but the lack of empathy. Because imagine you get 350-something housing units. You have ordinary workers. I know ordinary workers who are crusaders for the National Democratic Congress. Some of them are upset with me because they say, well, I break and so on. But I know ordinary workers. I know workers of the National Democratic Congress, ordinary people, who at great expense to themselves follow that party. You were not able to give one of these persons a house?
Not one.
I'm talking now, I'm saying these are deserving cases, I'm not just talking just about patronage. I'm saying there are deserving cases amongst you. Needy people. Who under any kind of thing you would say, okay, you're deserving. In other words, not because they support your party, but they objectively deserve. And let me tell you something. There are at least 3 of them who are strong, solid as you could get NDC supporters. You think you have strong supporters? I know 3. I can't call the names here. It would be an ethical thing to do, and I won't do it, but they know who they are. I got houses for them and gave it to them. I mean give it to them for free, but made sure that they sign up the documents, they paying whatever they had to pay as everybody else. But in fact that we assisted them on the list, which otherwise they would not have gotten. And I'm saying, imagine, Mr. Burke, and people came to me and say, well, that's a good point you make, Chess, but tell the country how much Mr. Burke houses Mr. Burke. I said, no, I'm not in that kind of politics. I leave that for others. I leave that for others. I speak just to the facts, right? I speak to the case when I went up in Carriacou at my own expense, at my own personal expense, after I was arrested and the workers were beaten out of the brewery there. And I went up there, I remained, I told Peter, I said, Pedro, I've reached the end of the line. This is it for me. All right? I am leaving the National Democratic Congress. I said, because in all of my years of fighting Dr. Mitchell, he's never released riot police on me. He brought out riot police with the nutmeg workers. But I simply went up to the officer in charge and asked him, I said, excuse me, sir, but are you holding a proclamation from the Governor General suspending civil liberties? He told me no. I said, in which case? You can't stop me. And I marched all of Derrick workers, 100 and something women who came from all over the country, and I led them in a march in town. When we were coming back to go to the PWU, where we had headquarters, then Commissioner, and I hope Brother Clarkey is listening to this. Me and Clarkey go down really very good, good comrades, let me tell you. He came to me and said, Senator Humphrey, stop. So I stood up. Follow me in the fire station. I said, Brother Clarkey, you know me. I'm a leader. I don't follow people. People follow me. I said, look, let's get this thing straight. You know how to execute an arrest. I give you one guarantee. I would not resist arrest. So if I've done something that requires an arrest, if I breach the law, arrest me. All right? Arrest me, and I tell you, I would not resist. So if you execute your arrest, I'll go along with you. But I'm not going to the fire station. I'm leading the workers back to the Public Workers Union. And I say, are you arresting me or not? He said, no, I want you to follow me. I say, I don't follow people. People follow me. And I say, onwards, comrades. And we march back. So I'm saying all of this to say that when they attacked with riot police, the workers at the Bureau, my journey with the National Democratic Congress has come to an end. Because my entire engagement in politics, whether it's under the revolution, you know that. You know I closed down the Raman Quintana plant. That's a plant that's supplying asphalt mix
During the revolution.
to do the revolution. I closed it down. I mean, Phyllis Code is not here, but I led the first strike against Phyllis. Phyllis was chairman of the hotel group that had hibiscus.
Yeah.
And when the workers tell me the conditions under which they had to work there and they ain't getting no overtime and thing, I wrote Phyllis a letter. Not as a comrade. I wrote as a letter as I would write any businessman. Selvin Strawn, who was head of the organizing and disciplinary committee, summoned me to a meeting and tell me that I was rude. I said, rude? I said, well, if Sister Code behave like if she's an employer, she gets an employer letter. He demand of me to take back the letter. I said, Selvin, you don't know me. I said, Selvin Strawn, you don't know me. Take back letter. This time, Jim now put all the thing on me, but I prepared to carry it. And I said to him, I said, Selvin, let me tell you something. I said, hey, right here now, I resigned from the New Jewel movement. Do whatever you want to do. And I walk out of the meeting. Ask him. Ask Liam James. I walk out of the meeting. Right? I said, do whatever you want to do. Tell me they know how to deal with counters. I said, well, go ahead. Do whatever you want to do. And this is why, after I came out of prison, I was able to reestablish my links. Notwithstanding the tremendous agony suffered by the Grenadian people. People understood that I was different. I've always been independent.
Genuine.
Always been independent. And that my belief of working class is my religion. You follow me? That's what I believe. That's who I am. And so, I had come to an end. But Peter said, no, hold on. And I saw a good opportunity in trying to amend the law that was used to lock out the workers for 66 days. So I traveled to Carriacou at my own expense at that meeting. In fact, the meeting became riotous. And I had to step in that meeting and bring control. People were addressing Tillman Thomas in a matter that was undignified.
Yeah.
And I stepped forward and said to you, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, I have to take issue with you. The gentleman sitting there is our prime minister. He might be leader of the party, but he is still the prime minister. And therefore, you can't address him in that way. I caused one fella to walk out of the meeting. I said, man, I said, let me tell you something, man. You totally out of it. I said, you can't speak to my prime minister so. And here I was, offering a defense to the prime minister who stood neutral and who allowed the riot police. And that's after I was arrested and charged in 7 charges. But I went to Carriacou. The resolution which I brought then was about to be adopted, but it was one objection. The only person who objected was Burke. And Burke objected on a matter which was in the preamble, which was the truth. All right? And we had I was prepared to debate to the end. And then again, Peter came and said, look, Chess, this meeting will just mash up. Withdraw your objection and let the resolution pass. And I did exactly that. Glenn Noel came to me too. But it was Mr. Burke seeking to water down the resolution. And and then it was passed. All right? And I therefore introduced, for the first time in the history of the Grenada Parliament, I know of no other parliament where a non-member on the government side, a non-member, not on the government side, brings a private member bill to amend existing legislation and succeeded. Right? The amendment was passed in the Senate. When it came down to the House of Representatives, Mr. Burke killed it. So that today, what happened to the bureaus in 2011 could now happen today thanks to Mr. Burke. So all I did in the campaign was just to remind the workers of this. Now here was a guy, he was Minister of Finance, leader of government's business in the House. You were locked out for 66 days. Don't pay a cent. You had to rely on the union to pay you to give your family something to eat by paying your salary and so on. The matter is still before the court. And he now wants to graduate from Minister of Finance to Prime Minister.
Never happened.
You need to make a decision. The man has shown you, as Peter David say, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. So that's all I did in the campaign. My campaign had absolutely nothing to do with denigrating people. My campaign was just straightforward. Yes? And I think, as I said, based on the strategy of running on your record and examining the record of your opponent is what has led to this result.
Let me ask you a question, though. We've seen the results of the election campaign 2018. What does this say now of the National Democratic Congress? You have stated, and I did hear the statement made before, that the NNP ran on their platform, on their performance, on their record, and the NDC ran away from their record.
That's correct.
What does it say of the NDC right now? 23,000 persons voting for that organization, no seats in parliament, and some very unfortunate utterances between last week, Tuesday, and now. Very unfortunate utterances and behavior by several members. I know usually you tend to save your mind from having to listen to certain sort of things, so you may not have heard some of the statements being made.
No, I listen to everything. I am not that close-minded person. I listen to everything. I read everything. Many people don't know that I studied comparative religion at university. I read everything. A man who doesn't read is an idiot.
Not the reading part, but the listening part to some of what.
Well, if I have the time, if I have the time. Essentially, well, let me put. You remember I said to you that, and on the night of the election, when I invited myself onto the MTV program, I pointed out that the so-called group of independent NGOs, headed by Miss Judy Williams and Sandra Ferguson, nothing but a fraudulent group of persons who are activists of the NDC.
Yep.
I mean, I hear people bemoan whatever happened with Judy Benoit, but everybody knows Judy is a sympathizer. I mean, par excellence of the National Democratic Congress. I mean, I don't know. We live in a small society. I don't know who people are trying to fool. And I think that they anticipated a defeat. The extent, I can't say how much. So they started to lay the basis for an argument that the election was fraudulent. And in fact, George Grant has played that script. In fact, it is George Grant's script now. I called him last Sunday when he did something. But these guys, anyway. Here's what he did. He waited towards the last end of his program. After the tenor of his program, the tenor of the program that he conducted was one which played to the chorus of an election that was fraudulent. And he waited until the last moments of his program and read the reports of the OAS and the CARICOM.
Yes.
None of which said that the elections were fraudulent. They both said that there were some processes and there were some defects in the law which may have allowed, certain things to happen, but not sufficient to alter the final results. So, for example, the issue of people who are Commonwealth citizens, and let me make the point here. The law which exists now existed in 2003, existed in 2008, existed in 2013. Between 2013 and 2018, or from 2008 up until 2018, the National Democratic Congress sat in the, first of all, they were in government for 2008 to 2013. They made absolutely no amendments to the law. What is the law? The aspects, the aspects in the law which they are pointed to now existed then. All right. They were in opposition, but were in the Senate. From 2013 to 2018, Mr. Burke is an attorney at law. He introduced not a single resolution to amend any component part of the law. And he has the authority and the powers to do so. Not a single one of them. They have not documented, as far as I know, a single case. They are making allegations. But where is the documentation? Where is the Devon who is a Vinci that come and vote? Where is the documentation? They're making these broad allegations, and they're planting these allegations outside there. Now, that's dangerous, and I'll tell you why it's dangerous. Because people who feel aggrieved, people who feel that they have been treated badly, can find alternative ways to find redress. Now, I listened again as I was getting dressed to one of the programs, and a caller called in and was expressing the usual thing. But that caller made an observation that notwithstanding the results and so on, she was happy that there was not a single incident of violence in this entire election campaign. All right? Now, when George Grant and them manipulate and plant into people's mind, unsuspecting, what they are doing is laying the seeds for precisely what Grenada has become known best for: peace and tranquility. Peace and tranquility. And let me take a moment here to address my good friend Jimmy. I will call him on the phone because really very disappointed when Jimmy on George's program on Sunday suggests that people like myself who have supported, I don't know who Ruggles support. What I know that Ruggles is an independent, fiercely independent, objective thinker. Ruggles is a very dear friend of mine. Not only is a very dear friend, he's a comrade of mine. He's my attorney. But Ruggles and I have differences on several issues, including the CCJ, including Mr. Jerry Seals. We have serious differences on those, right? But he's a very dear friend of mine. And I can tell you something. If you have a friend of Ruggles Ferguson, you have a genuine friend, right? And I don't know, I can't say who he supports. He's never discussed this with me. I've never asked him. It's of no interest to me. When we meet, we don't discuss these issues. But to seem to suggest that persons like myself who are supporting the New National Party and Dr. Mitchell are doing so because we are getting some material benefit, which otherwise we may not have been able to get. I mean, quite frankly, Jimmy, I'm so disappointed in you because, and it's not a question of reproach, but it's a question to say, when you decided to step forward from your secured chambers and enter the realm of politics, and it's a good thing that you did that. I mean, because Jimmy has a brilliant mind. He comes from a legal family that of distinction. And I tell you something, is it Jimmy Emanuel, is it Jimmy, not necessarily Jimmy Emanuel, well, Jimmy Emanuel, Jimmy Bristol's, and Steele. When people from that group in society step forward to be engaged in the politics, you have to take your hat off on them. You have to take your hat off. Because given our historical sociology, how we evolved as a country, and the fact that in our sociology, race and class are factors which defined us. For people of a certain class and a certain racial tone to enter into the arena of politics, to suffer attacks and so on. But you see, that this is the beauty of the New National Party now under Dr. Mitchell. And as I said so in a meeting in Lansapine the other night, that here you can have on the platform a rabid socialist labor leader standing on the same platform with a member of what I would hitherto call the ruling class or the business class. And not only am I standing on the same platform, but I'm asking people and I'm asking the workers to vote for him. I mean, where else do
nowhere else in the Caribbean is seeing that.
Where else would you find that?
Never see that in
but you see, because I'm a student, because I am of a student of history, I could understand these things. I could understand the pact that brought together the young Soviet Union and the Allies in order to defeat Germany. Because of my understanding of history and my understanding of where we have to go and where we find ourselves in the world today, the kind of economy that we have inherited, unless we join all social forces and strata, must come together in order to solve the problems that affect this country. The other thing I may say is that the ruling class of Grenada, if you want to use that term, is a more enlightened group. We don't have the grave disparity and inequity of wealth that you see in a Jamaica, for example, or that you see exposed now in Trinidad, because the consequential effect of not having a social conscience and a social compact, as I invited them, climb the highest hill in Lansapine and look south into Trinidad and see what's unfolding there. We don't want to have to live like that. We don't want to have to live like that. I pointed out to somebody who was telling me how amazed they find Grenada. I said, do you know that in Grenada, the business class support profit sharing? I said, even with the collapse of the revolution, I think Hubbard's. You know, Hubbard's has never made any attempt to dismantle its profit sharing. I said, if you go on the Rum Runner, you see a white-skinned looking guy. Don't believe he's a worker, you know. He's the owner of the business. But you can't tell just by looking at him. You can't tell just by looking at him. So that in Grenada, we've reached a medium in where the social forces, and let me say something. Think about this individual really. He pronounced it himself. He's a Garyite. What did Gary represent in this country? You see the point I'm making? So we have reached a sort of medium in this country, which has been reinforced by the outlook of the new National Party and by the position that has been adopted by Dr. Mitchell. He's brought all the class forces together for the benefit of the country, for alleviating the developmental problems of poverty in this country. You follow me? So,
with all of that, though, Senator, there's still that pervading mindset within the NDC, and it has been coming out again, in fact, a little more viciously over the past week.
Let me go back.
That mindset of the NNP supporters being needy and greedy. That's why someone is easy to say that
me go back.
You've been bought.
So I was just dealing with Jimmy to say that, Jimmy, when you enter the political realm, you had my full support. You remember when they started your crucifixion? From Ralph Gonzalez's mother's house, where Ralph and I had been visiting his now deceased mom. From her house, I called in on a call-in program, I think the same George Grant program, to offer my defense for Jimmy. And Jimmy, when you entered the politics, I don't think you entered because you wanted to acquire wealth. So then why say the same thing about me? People can move on the basis of their conscience. And you moved on the basis of your conscience. I respected that. And I gave you the best shot of my defense. I felt it was an error to have terminated Jimmy as Attorney General. Right? I don't think that the so-called transgression was grave enough. Because what I was looking at not disrupting that social compact. Yes. Not disrupting. Here you have an independent member. You would want to say come from the ruling class or whatever it is. Brave all the weather to enter the political arena, giving to the state at a ridiculous salary his intellect in the field of law. That to me is more important than some letter he write something. And here I was arguing with my colleagues inside of the NDC. Do not do that. Jimmy's contribution is more important than whatever little You know, I did not see Jimmy as entering because he wanted to bag a set of money and so on. So then, Jimmy, why do the same to me? Why do you feel you're the only one possessed of conscience and there's nobody else? In other words, I hate class arrogance. And I just thought I would use this opportunity because I may not get the opportunity again. I will call you if you will take my call because I felt very disappointed. I mean, take a Peter David, for example. Peter David don't need polit. I mean, Peter David, you think Peter is interested in wealth? What the hell are you talking about? Peter David?
Involved in what he's
Give me a break. Give me a break. And Jimmy, don't forget that these people expel me.
Yeah.
I joined them. I joined them on the request of Tillman Thomas, and they expelled me in clear violation of their constitution, in breach of all the norms of justice. Right? I didn't know what I was charged. I was never given a hearing. I was not asked to enter defense. I didn't know what I did. All right? And then they tried me at the appellate court of the party. The disciplinary rules of the NDC lays out that if it's a disciplinary matter, it goes to the disciplinary committee, which is a committee of the management or executive, and then that committee reports to the executive, and then the executive decides what it will do.
Exactly.
Would it uphold whatever recommendations are made, and would it alter the recommendations? No. If I am dissatisfied with what the executive has done, then the appellate court is the Congress. I can go. Appellate courts don't try people. Appellate courts review what was tried. Mm-hmm. You call a meeting, you pump up people, right? The masses. So mob rule. And here you have Mr. Burke superintending quietly over the whole thing, you know. I mean, Finsley St. Louis told me that he called me. And I mean, I could afford to call names because I'm not telling the truth. I'm not saying anything disparaging. He said, but, you know, Chess, I don't know what them fellas put your name on this thing there for. Because I asked them, what do you do? I said, well, Finsley, I have no interest in this, you know. Whether they expel me, they keep me, or I said, Finsley, my journey with you all has come to an end. I could no longer get anything from you for the workers. So as far as I'm concerned, my journey has ended, right? And he said to me, he tried to move a counter motion, and he was shut up by William Joseph, who said it's too late, then call motions closed or whatever it is, and they proceeded. Anne-Marie, what's her name again? From she's always on the radio. Help me now. Eben also called me to tell me what they did to me. I said, look, Anne-Marie, forget this. When they were going to the court to file an action, because remember the NDC could not select another candidate because they had breached their own procedures in the rules, and then Carl Hood decided he was going to file this action in the court, and he came to me to be party of the action. And Carl could tell you no. I said, Carl, absolutely not. Don't put my name on any matter having to do with any appeal. I am happily expelled. I accept my fate, and I am moving on. So here it is. You have expelled me. What is your issue with me? I didn't remain in your party and act as a double agent. Excuse me. You expelled me quite openly. I accepted my expulsion. I offered no defense because I didn't know up to now what I was charged with. You were so unethical that you kept my party contributions, and up to now you won't give me back my $15. They still owe me $15. It became public. In fact, I still want my $15 back.
It's yours.
Because I paid my year's dues. You expelled me in September. So I was no longer a member in October, November, and December. So that $15, could somebody in the National Democratic Congress do the decent thing and hand me back my money? So I don't know what all this. So this whole thing now, and notice they have provided no documentary evidence. I'm very disappointed in George Grant. And he's engaged in a very dangerous game, because I said to you, if you sell to people that they have been treated unfairly, in fact that people have been robbed, then you can have an alternative response. And that is a danger in going down this road, because the laws are the same. In 2003, when we took the National Democratic Congress, within 6 votes of forming the government and winning the popular vote, it is the same election laws that were there, with the same justices of the peace who could sign, with the same thing, nothing. In 2008, when we won, the laws were the same.
Same thing.
And then they're talking about using state resources and doing this and that. All political parties do that. When they gave out in mass, land titles in Mount Hartman and different places and so on, what do you think that was all about? So I don't know what they're talking about. And notwithstanding that, in 2003 and 2008, right, what is missing from the formula in 2013 and now is a group that they expel.
Exactly.
And that is what they don't want to come to terms with.
They don't like that.
Because as Peter said, when we joined you in 2000, when we joined you after 1999, you had 0. We took you from 0 to 7 and winning the popular vote. In 2008, we took you from there to win 11 seats. You expel us and you go right back to 0.
And you still have 0.
And you expel us. The reason you gave for losing, you say that we are termites. And the termites create confusion. So, as a result of being divided and so on and so on and so on, you lost that election. Well, the termites have been out for a long time. Mr. Burke had all the time in the world to carry out the second phase of his plot.
8 years.
Right? He had all the time, because I'll say something now that I've never said before. And I know those who are anti-me won't want to believe it, but I can tell you that in 2000, it could have been early 2003, after the early 2004 after the election, or it could be 2006. Peter and George Prime will remember those dates. Mr. Burke came to me. We met outside on Green Street at the gate of the Technical and Allied Workers Union. And he came to me supposedly having come from a meeting with former Prime Minister Nicholas Brafitt, who he said to him that George Prime should be removed. And little did I know that Prime had written his resignation and was heading towards Tillman Thomas to deliver it. I stopped George Prime. And I can't reveal in full the things that I said to Burke because we had a confidential discussion, but I could tell you about that meeting. And I said to Burke, Burke, I'm not going down the road of 1983. It's an experience that's indelibly marked in my mind. We have let down the Grenadian people greatly. I didn't give any orders. I was not part of whatever happened at that level. But I take responsibility because I helped create the Grenada Revolution and not going down that road. When they came to me to remove Tillman Thomas, I said to them, if you all touch Tillman, I march 1,000 workers against you. And those who came to me know who they are. I prevented them from moving against Tillman because they came to me through a group in New York to which Burke is closely linked, and Burke knows about it. In fact, the thing unfolded so much so. And when I hear them, Peter, I don't know. I call it the second assassination of Morris when I see how they deal with Peter. Peter is such, when people go, you know, the world always destroys good, you know. Nas got Teddy Victor to move the motion to nominate him to challenge Tillman. And you know who defeated it? Peter in conjunction with myself. So when I hear the Joan Purcells and them speak, and I asked Mrs. Purcell, when Tillman as leader lost in 2013, had you written these epistles about Tillman? And Tillman lost albeit with difficulties because there was internal wrangling when they expel us. There was no such wrangling now. You wrote not a single word on Tillman's behalf. But now you're writing whole useless epistles about Burke. Burke must do the honest and decent thing that all leaders with integrity do.
Resign.
Look at what happened in the British referendum. All leaders do it. All leaders do it. You know? But so I ask her,
Patrick Manning after the 2020
did she write what she's writing now? When Tillman, as leader, lost the 2013 elections in much more difficult circumstances, albeit there was internal wrangling in the party. So you see this level of hypocrisy and hiding behind this religion and so on, you know, it just gets me sick. I feel the puke when I see it. Because, you know, they just confuse ordinary innocent people. You know, so, you know, look. And then they tried this red herring on me, that I am the president of the House and I'm in breach of the Constitution. I mean, you know, try this bloody red herring.
Stupidness.
And I can't point to a single part of the Constitution which says, and when I show to them the absurdities of the argument, well, the issue died there. Because do you know the Constitution preserves 3 posts when Parliament is dissolved? The President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, and the Leader of the Opposition if there's one. So if you are saying that the President cannot campaign because supposedly he will display bias, but there's no House, there are no senators, how can I display bias? There's no House, the House has been dissolved. Right? The Constitution gives me a right of freedom of speech and freedom of association. Now, if my conduct during my campaign is unbecoming of what is the normative for somebody who holds that position, then you have a case and say, well, I'm free of bringing the House into disrepute. But I have not been vulgar in my presentation and my language. I've been emphatic. There's no doubt about that. After all, the trade union genes run in me. So I'm a trade unionist by nature. I'm emphatic. I am forceful when I make my points. Right? But I've done it in a dignified way. I have not slandered anybody. I have not committed a libel on anybody. All right? Whatever I did with the necessary dignity. All right? Because the absurdity would be, if Ms. Joseph is correct, it means that a speaker who is speaker from amongst the elected members cannot take part in his own election to be re-elected. I mean, what an absurdity. Right? So they tried that red herring simply because they begun to understand that I have a message in this campaign that the workers would listen to. And so therefore they tried to disarm me. But, I mean, it's clear that they don't understand who I am because I wouldn't allow that to disarm me. So the point I'm making here is this, if I may just, I've been pretty much long-winded, and that is, it is a great opportunity for the National Democratic Congress to reorganize itself. Unfortunately, I don't believe this will happen. I see that Mr. Burke has a fairly large bevy of people led by the Joan Purcells and so on who are campaigning for his stay.
Entrenching. The process of entrenching is in the last few days.
All I tell people is to visit.
I don't mind.
Is to visit, as it were, what I would describe as our political anthropology, our sociology. And let me tell you what I mean by this. The GNP, which was essentially constituted by the remnants of the planter class and the upper merchants, formed that political organization. It's an extension of the privileged class that had the right to vote. But once universal adult suffrage was had, secured for us by the working classes, namely the agricultural workers, and I paid tribute to them when we were in Latent the other night in a meeting there and called for a moment of silence for those who were shot down. That party, in terms of its social complex and its genetic social code, has evolved into the National Democratic Congress. And on the other hand, the GULP, as well as, because let me say this, the young revolutionaries emerged mainly from the GULP social base. There was some middle class, right, who became enamored by progressive ideology and so on. But many of the revolutionaries, and this is why Gary never attacked the revolution, even when Gary reactivated into politics. You remember when Fidel Castro visited here, Gary never launched an attack. There was only one individual that called for a protest. Gary did not join in because Gary understood the social composition of the base of the revolution. And you notice something that I've always said. I've always treated Gary as a revolutionary in the period when he was revolutionary. I mean, I want you to read an article which was done by, the name is going to come to me now, that did an analysis of the Gary-led revolution. It's going to come to me because we used to study that in the days when we were studying, when we had party studies and so on. We studied that document. Chris Holness, a gentleman called Chris Holness, wrote that article. I believe Chris Holness was a pen name, a non-the-plume name, but it's Chris Holness who wrote this article, and you should try to get it to read it. Very instructive, very in-depth. It was a small pamphlet, but very in-depth in terms of its analysis. And the New National Party has evolved out from the GULP and those revolutionary forces. So that today, essentially what you have is GNP and GULP in the form of NDC and NNP. Now, having said that, the GNP never defeated Gary. The only time they replaced Gary is by intervention. When the British dissolved Gary's government because he drove a steel ban allegedly through some public meeting, and they dissolved the government and the squandermania thing, that's the only time the GNP took office. The second time they took office was on the heels of the collapse of the revolution, and even then they were forced to amalgamate with different political parties. Let me tell you something. The same thing will happen with the National Democratic Congress. The National Democratic Congress, because of its social construct and the power forces that are at play behind it, will never defeat the New National Party. And now that the New National Party has embraced that strata of working people's children who are ideologically conscious. So I don't care what formulation they give, right? They will never. In other words, I see Mr. Burke as the Harlem Eustace of St. Vincent, he's the Harlem Eustace of Grenada. They will never. So unless they do something radical, and this is an opportunity to sit back and to look really, but they don't have that capacity. So what they do is that they look for red herrings all over, right? They look for red herrings all over, and they won't sit down and analyze objectively what it is that has led to this tremendous loss, why it is that the Grenadian people have rejected their leadership. So they put it down. And I mean, this thing that George Grant is peddling there, that the OAS has found that the elections to be fraudulent. I mean, this is just absolutely untrue. They have pointed to weaknesses in the system, which has been an existent. In fact, with those same weaknesses, we defeated the New National Party twice, back to back. And they only won after we were expelled, simply because the NDC leadership never understood how they won those two elections.
And they will never.
They never understood how they won. They let themselves to believe. And you see, that's why they're upset with Peter. They thought that Peter will go into the political graveyard. And no, boy, aren't they cussing Glennis? Oh, my gosh. Aren't they cussing? I heard Glennis get some cussing this morning. Aren't they cussing Glennis? Again, the woman just simply spoke of her experiences as an ordinary working class woman whose mother or grandmother had the same social base as Dr. Mitchell. All she did was to speak to truth, how they treated her. how they disparaged her. Right? In other words, this thing about needy and greedy is not just a slogan, you know, but it exposes the ideological content.
That's the dangers of that.
The ideological content of the people who make up the National Democratic Congress. And as I say, they are the inheritors. They inherit the genes of the Grenada National Party, the GNP. So this struggle of poor people in Grenada, right, and of the working masses continues, you know. Continues, right? It continues up to today, right? The acumen of Dr. Mitchell is that he is able to bring all the forces together, as I said to you before. In other words, he could bring a leading business family on the same platform as a radical left socialist trade unionist. To do what? To create jobs, to create opportunities in a world that is now hostile, right? Where the entire world economy has changed, where there has been a collapse of plantation economy, and therefore there has been a collapse of the rural middle class as a result of the changes in the economic structure. And now the task ahead of us is the second phase of the renewal. We have, Dr. Mitchell has successfully completed the structural adjustment program on the fiscal side. We now have to move to deal with the structural adjustment now on the economic side with the new realities which confront us. And he'd already started to point it. When he talks about a new economy, this is what he means. But again, they're poo-pooing the idea. So they get the ideological acolytes, the George Worms and things to write crap. When we talk about a Project Grenada, and what does Project Grenada mean? I mean, these guys are so backward. They are so... Essentially, what we are saying is, let us bring the forces together. Let us bring the business acumen of a Nikki Steele and of the business class. Let us bring that into the politics so that we can govern the state better. Right? Let us tackle the problems of lack of opportunity for the children of the working class who would have gone through secondary school, succeeded in secondary school, yet there's no employment because the economy is not growing. Right? The world is now changing. Countries are going back now to a more claustrophobic kind of a thing. In America now, with all of this nationalism, white nationalism is sweeping the United States. They feel threatened by non-white communities. So they want to build this wall to keep out what they see as a horde that threatens now white power. That is how they're seeing it. The Europeans now feel threatened by people who are coming from the South. Okay, the world now is not just based on a narrow geography of Europe. The world now has changed. China and Southeast Asia is now leading the world. They're the areas of growth. All of these changes are taking place. China today, led by the Communist Party, holds the largest section of American debt. They're financing the U.S. Their productive capacity is enormous. What opportunities do we have? No trade war is about to begin to unfold, led by Donald Trump's nationalism and racism in the United States. What are the consequential effects for small economies like ours? What measures do we need to take now in the event that this trade war gets out of hand, as the case might be? How will we better survive? The whole issue, there are pressures now for the dismantling of CARICOM. You could see this happening from the north. Right? I don't know if you're paying close attention to it. How do we strengthen this unity? How do we bring our forces together? You know, so there's a whole series of challenges which face us and which have implications for what we have here in Grenada. The whole question of youth criminality that is sweeping the region. How do we protect ourselves from this? These are the questions which we need to address. These are the matters now which the brain power that we have to come together, right? You know, but of course they are diversionary things now. So, you know, people are there about how the elections were, about the government. I mean, give me a break.
But does it also speak to the veracity of a political organization itself, that it could say such a thing at a point in time like this? So you didn't know that happening all the time? If you want to accuse somebody of something, you're saying that you are terrible. at management and terrible at being able to deal with situations. If you accuse somebody of doing all these things, and you knew this all the time, and you never did anything to deal with it,
And
it says a lot about you as a party.
and to go to the extent that, I mean, someone said to
Just so
me, someone said,
nonsensical and unintellectual.
someone said that they saw me in Willis in a line where people gather up to vote, buying votes. I was paying people with $100 bills. I mean, that one really. I mean, assuming that the New National Party had to buy votes, they don't give me Chester Humphrey money. They don't give me the money. I will be so stupid to go in a line and buy the. I mean,
And in Nazimbo constituency.
and to broadcast.
You don't have a constituency.
Where you running?
And to broadcast this, they broadcast this. Jenny Rapier, or whatever her name is.
Jenny Simon.
Well, I don't know whatever her name is. Broadcast this on me.
Yeah.
That I was in a line handing out money to people buying votes, and that people call the police.
Hold that properly.
I mean, I mean, Devon, I'm so completely stunned.
It's not surprising what they would say to you.
And then I listened to Mr. Burke, that the Prime Minister came about in the constituency walking with his security, and people felt intimidated. So all those people in the line were so intimidated that they went and voted for the New National Party. Well, all I could say to Dr. Mitchell, you ain't selling yourself right. Probably Hillary Clinton needed you. I mean,
It's just a nonsensical nature of the arguments.
I mean, and trying to sell this to people, as the reason why they performed so disastrously in the last poll, rather than sit down objectively and strip everything away and find out why it is that our message did not resonate with the vast majority of the Grenadian people.
But I think what they're really running from is to lay the blame at the foot of Nazim Burke. That's what the leadership is really trying to do, to take away that blame from Nazim Burke.
Well, I don't know if I'm captaining a ship and it ends up on a reef and several people. I don't know how you absolve the captain
From that responsibility.
They did that to Tillman Thomas. They held Tillman Thomas accountable.
Yes.
They held Tillman Thomas accountable. I don't understand.
Let me ask a question, because it's after 12. But let me ask a question though. Do you think that there's a leadership battle presently on within the ranks at the NDC? From standing outside, I've been looking at the articles from Joan Purcell. I've been listening to the radio programs and one or two of the articles online and on the newspapers and so on, that seem to be trying to push aside something that is happening. Do you
It's
believe
it's a harbinger of things to come. I don't know for certain, but people don't do things without a reason. And people don't do things without a reason. And I'm wondering, why is it that Tillman Thomas, an individual who I still believe is a very decent individual, you hear me say this over and over about Tillman, right? A non-politician, of course, and there's no need to spend time, but why hadn't they treated Tillman the same way? I saw no long epistles from Joan extolling the virtues of Tillman and why he should remain as leader. I think they were happy to see the back of Tillman. If there are no internal issues in terms of the leadership within the NDC now, why these long epistles? So they must know something that I don't know. Not that I have a particular interest in the matter. I quite frankly really don't.
The person who is writing the articles was the quote-unquote leader of the NDC and the grouping when they lost in the 1999 election 15-0.
Well, precisely the point.
Why are they not lead? Well, they led by example. They stepped down. They had a new leader selected for the NDC and so on. There was a process.
But not only that, the way they attack me with venom. They have never attacked George Brizan that way. Brizan left them and went and took a job with Dr. Mitchell.
Exactly.
So since then, Dr. Mitchell was talking unity. And Brizan, the leader, and a founding member, he's a founding leader.
Founding member of
He's not just a founding member, he was a founding leader of the NDC. He left and went to join the NNP. Well, he took a job offered to him by Dr. Mitchell. They've never attacked him. I held no senior position in the NDC. I just joined. Tillman appointed me to the strategy committee, and I sat on the strategy committee, and I had a clash in terms of the strategy which should be followed with William Joseph and others. And after 2 meetings, they never invited me back. Well, they never invited me back, and doesn't matter.
Doesn't put you out.
Don't put me out. And then they eventually expelled me, and they went back to where they were when I first met them. And they continue to occupy the same position where they always was. So
very interested. The name William Joseph.
Is your call? Are you going to have any callers?
Yeah, I think I want to take a few calls for the next few minutes. So callers, we got so much into the conversation that the callers was difficult.
I really don't know.
440-7377, Devon, the overseas number again.
347-329-3101.
Yeah, so folks, you could call right now, right now.
Interestingly, that the name William Joseph comes up. One of the persons who spearheaded the expulsion of a number of members, right? But then found himself on the backside of Nazim Buck and the leadership of NDC right now.
No, because William discovered what we always knew. I mean, give William credit. William don't suffer fools gladly. And William discovered what we always knew. So Naz tooled William in order to get out, because the way he operates is he stays in the background. He never comes out in the foreground.
Never.
He's pulling the strings in the background. So he's pulling William's strings. So William came in. I assume that he had his view on a significant position in the leadership. But Naz is an insecure individual. So he wouldn't take a Franca to be his leader. He takes a Joseph, who he is satisfied, first of all, is no intellectual match. That's certified wise. Because we're talking about intellectual certification. And Naz has a lot of those.
Plenty of those.
So he takes someone who is nowhere near on par with him. And then he takes someone who he calculates quickly, don't have a sustained political future on the national stage, and makes him a deputy. Because I've always argued that had the NDC gone into this election with Franca as leader, the results would have been different.
Okay, we have a call online.
Good morning and welcome. Or good afternoon, welcome.
Pardon me?
Hello, you're live caller, go right ahead. Yes, you're live caller, go right ahead.
I'm live.
You're live caller, go right ahead.
Yeah. A person, good morning. To you, I just want to congratulate Mr. Chester Humphrey on a well done during the campaign. But more importantly, I want to congratulate the people of the South, right? The honorable now elected parliamentarian, Steele, and his team. Now, there's a lady who is always in the background. We call her Mommy Joy. You know, a very hard worker. And so we want to just, all of us at the South want to thank her for her patience and her guidance throughout the campaign. And so we say to all NNPIs, thanks for coming out. To those in the South, thanks for coming out. And we hope that we can work together for the betterment of our country.
All right, thank you.
All right.
440-7377.
And 347-329-3101.
The leadership issue within the NDC. Actually not giving them advice, and I want to keep the same leadership. I don't mind. I personally, I don't mind. But we have a caller. Let's just take the caller.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Yeah. Good afternoon, gentlemen, and good afternoon to Chef.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Humphrey, I have a quick comment and a question. Now, the point is that I never had the facts to back up what I was thinking about Nas, because I find Nas was too quiet while all these things was happening with the NDC before they mash up. I never had the facts to back it up, but this was what I always thought. Now I hear you explaining things, and I realize that I was not far from the truth. My question to you, sir, the NDC have lost in 1999, 15-0. They lost in 2013, 15-0. And 2018, they lost again 15-0. My question to you, sir, as a man with a higher level of understanding, what caused this loss and what caused this cut to be so deeper than the first cut, and why caused this loss to be so painful when it was not the first time and it's not the second time? I'm going to hang up and listen.
Well, I thought you can't answer that in one question. I thought I was giving you an array of facts that led to this. You see, so let me just come back with the William Joseph stuff. So William discovered that he was just a tool, and William is not prepared to suffer fools gladly. He is convinced that he has a contribution to make, and he wants to make that contribution, but he discovered that in order to do so, you had to have a particular kind of relationship with Nas, and so therefore he resigned. And today William is at the forefront of criticizing Mr. Burke. So the NDC is stuck with Burke for quite a while.
Yeah, a long time.
And I don't see how they're going to be able to, because there are key players inside there who have already started the campaign to keep him. And in his interview, in Burke's mind, he has done nothing wrong.
Nothing.
As far as Burke is concerned, he didn't fail the National Democratic Congress. The National Democratic Congress has failed him.
Yeah.
What is the definition of a narcissist?
Well,
and I asked that question for a specific reason. What is the definition of a narcissist?
Well, someone who is so self-centered that when the obvious is so glaring that they decide to deny what the obvious is. Someone who thinks about self. Self is the beginning and end of everything. And I think that that phenomena is at work in what we see there, because I've revealed to you that little did Mr. Tillman Thomas know that Mr. Burke and forces aligned to him, and I could have tried to say this openly, were prepared to move against Tillman in terms of his leadership. And it was a combination of Peter and I who frustrated that effort. So when I hear them say that Peter wants power and so on,
Yeah,
I know better than that.
Yeah. We have a caller online.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Not too bad.
Okay. I stayed down here for the whole morning and I very much enjoyed that program. I congratulate you all very well, especially Mr. Humphrey. Thank you.
All right.
All right. You're most welcome.
Senator, someone is asking online about the Kennedy Roberts factor and the infusion of Kennedy Roberts at that stage of the NDC campaign, and if that's not also a precursor of things to come.
Well, I would think so. We have to see how these things play out themselves. Although my own thinking is that I couldn't understand how Kennedy could have left the National Advisory Committee on Health Insurance, in which he played a significant role, to have gone over and to start talking about essentially saying that the New National Party's efforts towards national health insurance is essentially a mama guy and they won't get, Kennedy ought to have known better than that. Kennedy knew the work that we put out together But then again, as I said before, Kennedy, I don't want to spend much time on Kennedy, actually. Kennedy has his own narrow. I don't really want to spend time on. Kennedy was never a factor in this election, and I don't see him being a factor.
Politically insignificant.
Yeah, and I don't see him. I don't see him being a factor in any future election. From what I have come to know of him, I wouldn't be surprised if he tosses his ring into a leadership contest.
Yeah.
His motivation, I prefer not to make any
Pronouncements
comments on that, really.
Let's once take it out one, Devon, we have a call.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Gentlemen, how are you?
Yes.
We're quite fine.
All right. After the last statement, Mr. Humphrey made, like, if the leader is now going to remove, it's like kicking, he has to make the land. The thing is that, would you see any chances or see the Prime Minister or anybody extending their hand to bring any of the people from NDC to the Senate?
Well, I don't think the Prime Minister has those powers. In the absence of a leader of the opposition, the Governor General is clothed with those powers of the leader of the opposition according to our Constitution. And in her own deliberate judgment, she will make those nominations as she see fit. And here again, I go back to the nihilist approach of the NDC in their politics. They had a great opportunity because Dr. Francis Alexis Ruggles Ferguson did advance a form of proportional representation, which would have given, in the first instance, from my recall, there would have been a construct where the party winning the second largest number of seats would have been able to appoint or would have had a certain number of persons appointed to the House of Representatives. I think that was the first formulation.
They would have had one person appointed.
No. In the first formulation,
the bill that went through was
it was partial proportional representation. In that you will maintain the first past the post. You'll have a combination of first past the post and proportional representation, from my recollection and what was being discussed before. In that, all right, first past the post, all right, all the seats you get. And then there will be a certain amount of representation up to a certain number. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 or 6, Dr. Alexis could say, but he was trying to formulate something that he believed that all political parties could then accept. That was stillborn. I don't believe it was even able to get out of the womb, so that was stillborn. And then they came with a formulation which said that since twice the House of Representatives, there was nobody from the opposition, then there should be an opposition leader at all times, right? And even that, Mr. Burke rejected. I heard him give a waffled, obscurantist explanation as to why he objected to that. But when the people made their recommendations on constitutional reform, I don't believe any of these bodies, except for McIntosh, would have had that experience where one side won all the seats. So we are dealing with a different reality. And had Mr. Burke, but you see, Mr. Burke said it as distinct from Tillman Thomas. And here again, I must bring the differences. When Tillman Thomas was asked about constitutional reform, at the time he was the representative of the National Democratic Congress on the Constitutional Committee. He said, and I'm not quoting him, but to these words, he said, constitutional reform is incremental, meaning that you don't, and he went on, he said, look, you don't always get everything you want, but because it is incremental, you take what is nearest to what you want to get, which is a basic principle in our trade union negotiations. You take what is nearest to what you want, to, as I say, get your foot inside the door. And he went on to explain this. Subsequently, after Mr. Tillman Thomas was removed, I could recall Mr. Burke. Mr. Burke's motivation was as follows. He was not interested in constitutional reform. Mr. Burke's interest was he did not want to see Dr. Mitchell have a legacy. He said he's not interested in building anybody's legacy. But I mean, whether or not we like Dr. Mitchell or not, He has held the position of leader of this government longer than anybody else. The revolution lasted 4.5 years. Even Gary been in and out, never as long as Dr. Mitchell. So whatever you may think about the guy, but at least recognize that. But as far as Burke is concerned, he is out to destroy whatever legacy. He's not interested, as he say, in helping. That's Burke's interpretation of constitutional reform, that he was not interested in helping anyone's legacy. And so therefore, he opposed everything. Here is Mitchell, with the greatest surprise in the system, that is calling the election date, saying, look, let us have a fixed date. He said further, let us move away from where the Governor General appoints the supervisor of elections and he's answerable to her, but he has full administrative control. Let us set up an electoral commission, right? So that the power in this thing is diverse, everybody is well represented so that elections can be fairer. I mean, a guy who is prone to steal elections, would he be advocating such a thing? Huh? Would he be advocating such a thing? Huh? In all of Dr. Mitchell's career, have he ever used the prorogation of Parliament to save himself? In that vulgar interpretation of the Constitution? Never, the guy never did. You know, and here is he saying, look, I have all of this power, but for the goodness of our country, let's improve. The guy laid this thing out on the table. Yet what did we have? No. No. Simply because Mitchell said yes. You know, so Burke is reaping the seeds that he has sown. So today now, he can't appoint anybody. Had he had gone to accept that, look, boy, this thing happened twice before. We want certain reforms, but it is certainly closer to what we want than what currently exists. First of all, we would have had a fixed date, so there would have been no surprises.
Exactly.
The date certainly would not have been March 13th. Right? So there would be no surprises. You'd know upfront because you're in opposition and therefore you're strapped with money. You don't have the benefit of the state to be able to fix roads or do anything. So you would know upfront. Your financiers will be able to give you money ahead of time. The guy who went to the poll mobilized his base to vote no. Simply because he does not want to leave any legacy for Dr. Mitchell. So NAS was never about. This constitutional thing had absolutely nothing to do with country. It all had to do with Burke's, and it's not me. Burke stated it publicly that he is not about helping anybody build a legacy. And then, of course, he brought on board the Sandra Fergusons and so on, who are in themselves nihilists. They are anarchist nihilists who oppose everything. Whether it's creating jobs, whether it's improving the market square, whether it's replacing the old abattoir with a new one, they find some, these people, their philosophy is nihilism. They oppose nothing called modernity, they want it. So they prefer to leave the graveyard of all the boats around Lagoon Road with all the dump inside there. That's Sandra and them, that's how they look, in life, there are people like that. Life has space for everybody. And you have people like those. And they find a platform from which to articulate. So the latest attack now is the thing we call the blue. You know, there's a conceptual thing on the blue economy. Conceptually, what we can do. How can we transform our country and so on. And as I'm telling you, Devon, we need to address the structure of our economy to fit into the times that we find ourselves. The era of plantation economics has long gone, not coming back. Okay, how do we then transform? How do we create employment for the we have a high, and let me tell them again, we do not have the highest youth unemployment in the country, in the region, and the world. That is absolutely false. But it's unacceptably high. How do we create these opportunities? You cannot arm people with 11 more levels who are connected to the World Wide Web and give them cocoa knife and cutlass and fork and tell them go and find employment. That just ain't not happening. So let's be real with this. Okay? So how, this requires another program and another time.
We're quickly running out of time. We're into the last 5 minutes. I just dropped a call. Call back. You can call back right about now. Yeah, you could call back. Brian, good morning to you. Well, actually, it's afternoon now. Good afternoon to you. 97.5, we'd like to thank you for staying with us. We know that we only have about 5 more minutes with you, so we'd like to thank you all for staying with us. Yeah? Nice. Devon, you had a question you were about to ask too.
Just a couple of months ago, the whole question of the workers and government, in negotiations and so. And recently we have seen both the Technical and Allied Workers Union and Public Workers Union signing a MOU. And so, sort of explain to us what does that mean, the benefits, right, that it will...
But before we go into that, let's just take this call and then we'll come back to that. The MOU. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sorry.
I just
want to compliment you and Devon as hosts and to tell Senator Humphrey that this is one of the best presentations I've heard him give in many, many years. And the program itself was very full of good content, a lot of historical lessons that we need to learn. Congratulations.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
But this is what Project Grenada is all about, Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Devon, we would need another program, in fairness, to really discuss this
problem.
in depth, because what I will hate to do is to leave people half-filled, then, there's a lot of explanation to give.
Fair enough.
But suffice it to say that what has happened is that the state has now entered an agreement with its workers through its unions that it shall restore state pensions, and that the workers can expect that their pensions will be no less than 70% of their last salary. Right? There's still work to be done. There are a number of people who have already been pensionable but receiving nothing. Where will the money come from to pay them? The costing of that, because from my initial costing, because don't forget that I was initially involved in this as head of the union, that I planned the strategy for pension restoration when we went before the Constitutional Court with Mrs. Armstrong and so on. So that I am very conversant with a lot of the details, and it would require, I don't want to upstage the unions in this matter. But suffice it to say that I think the unions can be aptly proud of themselves. The members can be proud of their trade union organizations in that they have gotten the state to sign on to an agreement that because further talks now have to take place. And I heard another naysayer, a professional naysayer, there are a few of them, throwing cold water on this agreement to say the agreement is meaningless and so on. I haven't heard him in recent times. I guess the truncheon that he got at the polls have kept him silent. But he's another professional naysayer. And the interesting thing about these guys is they know everything, right? But when you strip them apart, they know very little of anything at all. But they're trying to throw cold water. But I think the union, the members, ought to be very proud of what the trade union leadership have been able to secure for them. And it lays now, as I say, a basis has now been found, so that is a broad sort of agreement. Now the meat has to be put now in greater detail. For example, who will be paid, how much they will be paid, how much it would cost, because you now have to cost this thing. If it is this amount of money, those who have already died, the estate will be entitled to receive that benefit. How we will treat people who have urgent need. So for somebody, for example, who is receiving cancer treatment, and they only recently retired, would they get the benefits about ahead of somebody who is healthy but retired 10 years ago? So you have all of these different, issues to tweak and to sort out to ensure that when a final agreement is executed, it is executed in which you can't please everybody in life, and if you set out to do that, you set out to failure. But you can do something that, when examined, it is fair and equitable to all. Right? So that work now has to begin. Okay, so there's a broad principle that you're not going to get less than 70% of your last salary. Okay, and then you have to now compute, because your last salary 10 years ago would not be the salary now. And then if you have pension indexation, whereas every time you get an increase, pensioners also get an adjustment. You have to go back now and work all those figures, and then you have retroactivity to give to these people. How are you going to do it? Is there going to be some retroactive forgiveness? What is the scale of this debt? This now requires research, and this is where actuaries now have to come in, professionals now. Because if you agree to something, you don't want it to start and 5 years down the road it collapse and the government can't pay people. You don't want that kind of situation. So now you have to bring in actuarial sciences that will tell you. And since a portion of it will be a NIS, and the NIS will be the main administrative body making this payment, you now have to have new actuaries coming in from them to do that. So there's a lot of nitty-gritty, painstaking professional work that needs to be done, which professional isn't available, say, within the unions and so on, because actual science is a thing on its own. And this is what I'm saying. I don't want to discard the discussion now, but sufficient to say that the government stated policy principle has become now an agreement in a wider sense, and then the fine-tuning to answer all the questions that have just popped up there now has to be done. So it's a work in progress, and
Senator, once again, I'd like to thank you for joining us here today. It is always a pleasure to have you in studio. And since Devon go and raise that one, it means that very soon we'll have to have you back in, because I think there's a lot that the average worker still doesn't understand in relation to that particular issue of pensions, and a lot that the average Grenadian still doesn't understand in relation to that issue as well. Different aspects of it that need to be gone into detail with. We need to go into detail with them, and also allow the callers to be able to ask different questions.
Right, that's true. But finally, as I depart, I just want to restate. Some people believe that this pension issue is an issue for Keith Mitchell. And so some people adopt the position, okay, opposed to Keith Mitchell, let me give him the pension in detail to me. This is not a Keith Mitchell issue. Let's be very clear on this.
No way.
This is an obligation of the state. So today or tomorrow, Keith Mitchell is no longer the Prime Minister, and it is Nazim Burke, the Prime Minister. The matter still has to be addressed. So let us get this clear. It is not a Keith Mitchell issue. I mean, granted, he is the one that has made the bold policy statement that before he demits politics, he wants it to be part of his legacy, that he was the one who restored pension. I mean, that's what he wants. But and I say rightly so, because he's the one that was brave enough, bold enough to face it down and says he wants to do it. Right? And if that becomes part of his legacy, then so be it. I mean, people spoke about an international airport for years, but it was under Morris Bishop it was done. People talk about athletics and things for years, but it's under Keith Mitchell, 2 stadia, 4 of them were built. So, I mean, if he inherits the legacy, well, he inherits the legacy. So, but I just want to make this clear in the minds of because there are certain union leaders who have been positioning this thing as if it's a fight against Mitchell. But I just wanted to be clear that this is not a fight against Mitchell. This is a state obligation that has to be done. And to see it that way, it is an obligation of the state to you. It's not an obligation of Keith Mitchell to you. And whatever is agreed upon finally has to be carried by the state. So let's just really just get this clear. I think if there's one thing I want to clarify on this matter at this stage is that.
Yes. All right. We'd like to thank you so very much, Senator. Devon, as usual. Another wonderful week.
Another wonderful week.
Yes, in
Touring week.
Celebration in St. Andrew. I know you're going up and take a piece.
I can go.
You guys
St. Joseph's Convent in Grenville again with that wonderful victory yesterday. First time in 53 years of Intercall that they have actually taken home the trophy.
Okay. This one
we like to contribute. We like to make sure and say to them, we're very, very extremely proud of you. I knew you girls could pull it off.
This one was for the Sisters of St. Andrews.
Sir Humphrey, we have mass. What's your alma mater?
No, GBSS. I'm a GBSS.
You don't have to ask that.
I'm a GBSS Heap House boy.
I'm swamped. I'm swamped. 3 to 1.
When I heard you play the school song, I can't think of any song that it evokes a special feeling.
Yes.
Anytime the GBSS school song plays, it
shivers in you.
Yeah, it brings back a. This is a wonderful institution.
I've seen some men in their 60s singing that song with such gusto.
I'm telling you.
And you had to learn that song and sing it every day.
But the words, I mean, you would listen to the words. So it's not just the musical.
Guys,
it's not just the musical. But this could be a national anthem, you know. With a little tweaking, it could be a national anthem because it embodies everything of which the nation speaks.
Exactly.
The principles that it tries to be, the prize to the one who earns it, man.
Let this be the golden rule.
This is the golden rule.
You all start a song like my deceased mom when she keep telling me that I had to go to grammar school.
Yeah.
She always tell me as a little boy, don't worry, one of these days we're going to go Grenada and you will go to grammar school.
No, because it built character. This is what it did. The GBSS built character. This is what the school was all about, the building of character.
You see, we go end up on our GBSS talk and we go finish. Folks, that's all the time we have for Hard Talk. Like to thank the Senator for being in with us. Devon, once again, wonderful weekend. Whatever you say, whatever you do it safe and secure. We want to be speaking to and with you
and not about you.
Yes, indeed.
Grenada and China sign MOU for air services agreement. Details to this story and more in the National Report. With the National Report, I'm Delroy Luzon. Grenada and the People's Republic of China have signed a Memorandum of Understanding which will result in increased air services. Negotiations for the Air Services Agreement commenced in 2015 following a trip to China by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, who said that an air services agreement with China will be a boost for the local economy. Grenada is the second country in the region after the Bahamas to formalize such an agreement with Beijing. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism and Civil Aviation, Mrs. Arlene Buckmeyer-Outram, says Grenada will use this new agreement to market its destination.
This is certainly a very welcome agreement because it means that there is no further room for us to cooperate and to promote Grenada as a tourism destination where we've seen quite a lot of cooperation in the areas of construction and other things. We're now looking at having that very large number of outbound Chinese visitors actually get a small portion, could be a small portion of that is what we would like to have come to Grenada. And therefore this air service agreement, which certainly provides the opportunities for air links.
Deputy Civil Aviation Administrator for China, Wang Zikong, is optimistic that Grenada stands to benefit significantly from the agreement.
我也坚信，不远的将来将会有更多的中国的旅游者、中国的生意人能够到格林纳达来，在一起促进格林纳达的发展。
And I believe that in the very near future there will be more and more Chinese tourists and business people coming to Grenada, and we look forward to make joint efforts with your side to make further development of Grenada.
This ceremony was attended by Chinese Ambassador Dr. Zhao Yongshen, CEO of the Maurice Bishop International Airport, Mrs. Wendy Francet Williams, and other members of the China Diplomatic Corps. Grenada and other CARICOM countries will receive assistance from the government of Mexico to prepare proposals to be presented to the Green Climate Fund. This will be done under a CARICOM Mexico agreement, which was recently signed during a Food and Agriculture Organization or FAO regional conference for Latin America and the Caribbean. FAO's sub-regional director, Dr. Listra Fletcher-Paul says the signing at the meeting held in the region for the first time in 20 years will also help in building capacity in the region on how to formulate Green Climate Fund projects.
Very often we have to rely on consultants from overseas, and we need to build that capacity. This is something that came through with the 5 Cs, with SEDIMA. We've had several meetings. We are part of a technical working group in the agriculture cluster of CARICOM, which is dealing with climate change, disaster risk management, and sustainable land management. Sustainable natural resources management. And one of the key recommendations with respect to this whole issue of funding was that we build capacity within the countries of the Caribbean to be able to mobilize resources. So this CARICOM Mexico FAO agreement will allow us to obtain resources to build capacity in that area.
Newly re-elected Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell has congratulated his CARICOM counterpart, Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown, and his Antigua-Barbuda Labour Party on their re-election to the government of Antigua-Barbuda. Honorable Gaston Brown and his incumbent Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party defeated the opposition United Progressive Party in the March 21st elections by winning 15 compared to the opposition's 2 seats. Dr. Mitchell says Prime Minister Brown has once again been given a tremendous mandate, which he must never take for granted. He further stated that the people of Antigua-Barbuda, like those of Grenada and the rest of the region, deserve the best representation. Dr. Mitchell also congratulated the people of Antigua-Barbuda for the peaceful expression of their democratic rights in strengthening their development thrust. The National Disaster Management Agency says the seismic alert level has been reverted to yellow on the advice of the UWI Seismic Research Center. Earlier this month, seismic activity triggered routine updates, and an intensification resulted in the alert level being elevated to orange. While this has now been downgraded, NADMA is urging marine operators and the general public to be vigilant and observe the exclusion zone of 1.5 kilometers. It says, working with the University of the West Indies Seismic Research Center, it will continue to monitor the activities of Kikemjeni and will update the public as necessary should there be any changes. This is a national report. More news after the break.
The season is coming. Saturday, 7th April, the Spice Mass Corporation launches the Caribbean's biggest summer festival. Spice Mass 2018, 10th Plainfield from 3 p.m. It's one exhilarating experience with display of fancy mass, traditional mass, jab jab, moko jumbi, and performances from Soca King, Boise, Groovy King, Dash, Road Match King, Lil Natty and Thunder, Calypso King, Rootsman Kelly, plus hand performances and presentation of the 2018 Carnival Queen contestants. For the kids, there's bouncing castle, face painting, and fun derby. Spice Mass Launch 2018 brings the entire family. Log on to spicemassgrenada.com for more. I love it.
Welcome back. There has been some added comfort at the Maurice Bishop International Airport. A second level has been added to the departure lounge, which is designed to ease the congestion at the original departure area. Concessionaires are already utilizing some of the available space.
The intention is that this second level will become the primary departure level once our retrofitting of the terminal is done. At this level, we'll have loading bridges that will, take people directly from the aircraft. But for the time being, we have a gate 5 right here, where actually American Airlines currently boards from this level approximately 2 weeks ago. So every day we have a flight boarding from gate 5.
That's Mr. Lenworth Gordon, Marketing and Properties Manager at the Grenada Airports Authority. He says retrofitting of the terminal should begin in a matter of months.
The view is excellent. It is not as clustered as downstairs. Some people feel claustrophobic in the small environment downstairs, so we're getting some good reviews. It's a work in progress. We've ordered some new chairs for upstairs that will complement the ones that we have, and we're doing other signage to enhance directional flow of traffic. So it's a work in progress.
Now recapping our top story. Grenada and China signed MOU for air services agreement. That concludes the national report for Thursday, 22nd March 2018. I'm Delroy Luzon. thanking you for viewing.